It has been written that the pen is mightier than the sword. Perhaps this is because the pen has the ability to summon the sword. Colonial newspapers, filled with opinion pieces written by the likes of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine, helped mobilize Americans for the Revolutionary War. The American media would rapidly evolve from these small, localized chains to become a multi-million-dollar business equivalent to millions of pens. Through the newspapers the printing press turned out, the world got its first taste of mass media. For William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, mass media meant mass profit. The circulation war between these two men demonstrated that the media leads the nation, for better or for worse. Pulitzer and Hearst would leave a legacy in blood and ink and show how war can be brought from print to presence. Joseph Pulitzer was born in Mako, Hungary on April 10, 1847. After gaining American citizenship in the Civil War, Pulitzer moved to Missouri, where he would take over the Vestal Post and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Pulitzer took the profits from these papers and, with the help of his brother Albert Pulitzer, purchased the New York World from railroad baron Jay Gould in 1883. The World quickly rose to prominence by securing the election of Grover Cleveland in 1884. New York was a swing state that would decide the election, and as Pulitzer biographer James Morris would write, electing Cleveland and boosting circulation were completely intertwined, the latter increasing the former. Pulitzer put his aggressive style of journalism on display through the political assassination of Republican candidate James Blaine. He explained his philosophy by writing, "The most valuable and successful paper will generally be that which has the most enemies." Pulitzer would use his vicious muckraking to make the World the most widely circulated newspaper in America. William Randolph Hearst was born on April 29, 1863, to U.S. Senator George Hearst. Pulitzer's success at the New York World inspired Hearst to drop out of college and take over the San Francisco Examiner from his father, giving it the title the Monarch of Dailies. Hearst quickly moved to acquire the greatest talents of his time, including Ambrose Bierce, Mark Twain, Jack London, and political cartoonist Homer Davenport. In 1895, Albert Pulitzer refused to sell the New York Morning Journal to his brother, instead opting to sell his paper to Hearst, who renamed it simply the New York Journal. The circulation war between Hearst and Pulitzer was ultimately a contest between competing philosophies.
Hearst believed in journalism of action, so he thought that the newspaper itself should bring about social change and social action in very concrete ways. Pulitzer sort of believed that too, but not the sort of inserting the newspaper into stories. Pulitzer's paper is doing some hardcore investigative work. So, his paper not only investigates that, but they make it into a crusade. They beat that story each and every day like a drum until there's change.
With that, the stage was set for the bitter birth of yellow journalism. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1888, both papers immediately jumped to treachery. For a week following the sinking, the journal dedicated an average of 8.5 pages to the sinking of the USS Maine. Hearst even went so far as to announce a $50,000 reward for information leading to the apprehension of the perpetrators of the bombing. While the world was not as outlandish as the journal, it too pointed the finger at Spain and had numerous articles alleging treachery on the part of the Spanish. All of this led the American people to call to war with the motto of "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain." 2 months later, President William McKinley convinced Congress to declare war. The wartime reporting proved to be just as sensational as the antebellum, creating one of the most famous myths in American history, the myth of the Rough Riders. Articles on the Battle of San Juan Hill depicted Roosevelt and his riders as heroes who helped take San Juan Hill, leading to many misconceptions. The Rough Riders were nicknamed Woods Weary Walkers because of their status as more of an infantry troop than a cavalry outfit. Roosevelt and the Rough Riders actually fought on Kettle Hill and suffered heavy casualties. In fact, it was the 24th and 25th Colored Infantry units who were responsible for the victory because their covering fire prevented the Rough Riders from being totally annihilated. Regardless of these facts, Roosevelt's Rough Riders were hailed as heroes, and the groundwork for Roosevelt's political career had been laid. While it is true that both papers exaggerated America's military dominance, the war truly was a crushing defeat to Spain. America's Navy, thanks to advanced technology, crushed the Spanish Armada in Cuba. At the Battle of Manila Bay, Commodore George Dewey's Asiatic Squadron completely annihilated the Spanish Pacific Squadron, ending the fight for the Philippines. Hearst's journalism in action ultimately bested Pulitzer's investigative method in wartime coverage. Hearst would break Cuban freedom fighter Evangelina Cisneros out of a Spanish prison camp, and even go so far as to make plans to personally fund a blockade of the Suez Canal. The Journal boldly asked, "How do you like the Journal's war?" And indeed, the Journal had overtaken the world as America's most read newspaper. Unfortunately, a much bloodier war would soon dominate the headlines. On February 4th, 1899, fighting broke out in what would be known as the Second Battle of Manila. 15,000 Filipinos sought to take Manila from an American occupying force of 19,000. The outmanned, outgunned Filipinos lost the battle with heavy casualties. On June 2nd, the First Philippine Republic declared war on the United States. It is at this point that most high school history textbooks quit talking about Hearst, Pulitzer, and yellow journalism. But this is a serious mistake. The Philippine-American War would not have occurred without the Spanish-American War that the World and the Journal brought from print to presence. Yellow journalism did not stop. The World published an article on January 22, 1889, claiming that Private Lapierre, an American soldier, had been infected with leprosy by the Filipino forces. Historians believe this account is false, and that Lapierre the leper was a pun for a sensational headline. Torture was commonly employed by American soldiers. A Senate committee reported that in one instance, a method of torture known as the water cure killed 134 out of 160 natives it was administered to. Both papers depicted the Filipinos as savage, even animal-like in their racist artistic renderings while ignoring American atrocities. Thanks to the newspaper's blessings, Roosevelt became popular enough to become vice president. After William McKinley's death, Roosevelt used brute force to end the war, killing 220,000 Filipinos in the process. As the World and the Journal praised Roosevelt, they were ultimately praising his militarism. Pulitzer and Hearst both made a killing off the killing overseas, setting a dangerous precedent for generations to come. Instead of peace being the default setting of American foreign policy, intervention became the norm. Citizen Kane, a film inspired by Hearst, explains this trend best.
You provide the prose poems, I'll provide the war.
In the case of World War II, Roosevelt's militarism may have inadvertently caused the war. The thesis that Roosevelt inspired Japanese imperialism is most famously argued by James Bradley in The Imperial Cruise, and asserts that Roosevelt sanctioned Japan's acquisition of Korea and advised the Japanese as Aryans of the East to seek empire. Roosevelt urged Japan to establish Monroe Doctrine-like policies, and even stated, "I should like to see Japan have Korea." The impact of this historic advice would not be felt until the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. For Joseph Pulitzer, his legacy remains mostly a positive one. Pulitzer restored his legacy as a journalist of integrity during the construction of the Panama Canal. The World alleged that the $40 million allocated to buy land from the French ended up being pocketed by the main lobbyists for the project, William Cromwell. Roosevelt decided to press libel charges against Pulitzer with the plan of imprisoning him. Instead of retracting the story, Pulitzer bravely defended free speech, and in U.S. v. Press Publishing Company, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of the paper. Pulitzer also revolutionized philanthropy. The Statue of Liberty, one of America's national symbols, was built thanks to the World's nationwide fundraising campaign, the first crowdfunding campaign in history. Pulitzer also established the Pulitzer Prizes, which continue to reward the best and brightest of American writers and journalists. Hearst's legacy remains mixed, but he boasts a tremendous influence on American politics. He functioned as a political kingmaker, guaranteeing Roosevelt's election in 1932 in exchange for the selection of former Speaker of the House John Garner as vice president. An avowed anti-communist, Hearst directly led the political assassination of Upton Sinclair. His paper's shaming of communist academics became a leading cause of the first Red Scare, and despite being a prolific producer of 558 feature films, Hearst would actively call for government censorship and investigation of communism in Hollywood, playing a direct role in the rise of McCarthyism. Hearst did, however, have his redeeming qualities. He actively tried to protect Jews from the Nazi regime despite initially supporting Adolf Hitler's rise to power. In their only meeting in 1934, Hitler claimed Jews faced no discrimination. Hearst responded, "I should think the industry should belong to every nationality," causing the Fuhrer to storm out in fury. After the infamous Kristallnacht in 1938, Hearst's papers became some of the only in America to openly criticize Nazi treatment of the Jews and demand America accept Jewish refugees. In many ways, yellow journalism is alive and well today. Hearst anticipated the influence television would have on the media, stating, "The coming of the motion picture was as important as that of the printing press." The scandals surrounding Brian Williams and Bill O'Reilly are examples of how the media hype up a story to increase sales. Not only did they exaggerate stories, other news outlets then exaggerated their exaggerations. Regardless of their reporting, NBC and Fox News are biased news sources, telling people of their political affiliation what they want to hear. Dr. Matthew Genskow of the University of Chicago School of Economics conducted a study concluding that the media is like ice cream. News outlets tailor their stories to meet the tastes of specific groups to make more money. This trend of profit before professional integrity was perfected in the newsrooms of Hearst and Pulitzer. William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer were both tremendous leaders who helped shape modern journalism. Pulitzer himself remarked, "There has been a revolution in journalism in New York." Together, they demonstrated that the media leads the nation by determining the outcomes of elections and fanning the flames of war. These men truly did leave a legacy in blood and ink, revolutionizing American mass media and the direction of American foreign policy.